On a freezing winter night, a little girl knelt in the snow, clutching a cracked glass angel. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Do you think angels can bring me a dad?" In that moment, a man who had everything, wealth, power, a mansion that could hold 100 lives, felt his heart shatter in silence. Ethan Carter was a millionaire used to being alone, haunted by memories of the family he had lost. But that child's fragile question tore through his walls and stirred something he thought was gone forever. This is not just a story about money or fate. It is about the power of love, the courage to stay, and how a broken angel can lead two lost souls home. Stay with us, and if you believe in second chances, subscribe to the Retold Stories, where love always finds its way back. Ethan Carter's house stood like a monument against the winter sky. Its walls of glass and marble, once celebrated in glossy magazines, now only reflecting silence. On nights when the wind pressed against the panes, the mansion groaned as if it too remembered the laughter that used to fill its rooms. Ethan would come home late, his leather shoes tapping across the empty foyer, each echo reminding him that no one waited on the other side of the door. The marble staircase that once held the patter of small feet now bore only the creak of age, and the music room where his daughter used to twirl was a tomb of dust and half-forgotten scents. He carried the weight of a briefcase, though he no longer believed in its importance. Deals, contracts, acquisitions, all of it seemed like a cruel distraction from the truth. His wife Emma had been gone for years, and with her had gone the warmth of his world. His daughter Claire, once the light of his life, had grown distant with time. Her absence another silence, folded into the great void of the house. A silk scarf still hung from the piano bench, perfumed faintly with Emma's favorite fragrance, a lingering ghost that both comforted, tormented him. Some nights he would sit there, his fingers hovering over the keys, unable to summon even a note. Music had belonged to another life, a different Ethan. Dinner was nothing more than leftovers eaten standing at the granite island, the taste of food dulled by the absence of company. He remembered Claire once giggling, telling him food felt lonely if eaten alone. Now every meal reminded him of her words. The empire he had built meant nothing when his nights ended in the hollow quiet of a cavernous home. Money was not a companion, not a cure for grief. It was only a mirror reflecting everything he had lost. That night, restlessness gnawed at him. He left his office, telling himself he was only going to check the mail, though deep down he knew he was fleeing the silence. The air outside was sharp enough to sting his lungs as he stepped into his car. The headlights swept across the driveway, illuminating the empty stone path, and then movement. A small shadow darted across the beam, frantic, fragile. His foot slammed the brakes, the screech echoing into the night. His chest pounded, his breath clouded the glass, and then he saw her. A little girl, no more than 8, knelt on the frozen walkway, her thin dress no protection against the biting cold. A pink jacket hung loosely from her shoulders, and her hands were scraped raw as she scrubbed at the ice with a rag. Her desperation was heartbreaking, as though clearing that patch of snow might change her fate. Ethan stumbled out of the car, his boots slipping as he rushed forward. He called out, his voice rough, but the girl startled like a wild creature and bolted into the dark, vanishing between hedges before he could reach her. The night swallowed her whole, leaving only the trace of her ragged breath and the fading sound of his own plea. On the ground, where she had been kneeling, lay a small ornament. Ethan bent down, his fingers numb as he picked it up. A glass angel, cheap and cracked, glued clumsily. Back together. A child's repair, tender but imperfect. Around its middle, tied with twine, was a scrap of paper. He unfolded it and read the words written in shaky blue marker. "Do you think angels can bring me a dad?" The question sliced through him, deeper than any boardroom betrayal or public failure ever had. His knees weakened, and for a moment he knelt there in the snow, staring at the broken angel, the cold forgotten. He thought of Claire asking once why people prayed to angels at Christmas, and of Emma's hand brushing his when the world felt too heavy. Now a stranger's child had written the words he could not answer for himself. Back inside, he placed the ornament on the piano, its cracked wing catching the lamplight. He sat in silence, staring at it, his fingers tracing the fracture again and again. He could not play, could not eat, could not move past the echo of that question. He paced the halls through the night, his mind tangled with grief and sudden purpose. The house, once only a mausoleum, now felt like a place waiting for an answer. What if she came back? What if she did not? He whispered into the shadows, not sure if he was speaking to God, to Emma, or to the angel itself. At dawn, he opened the front door and saw the driveway blanketed in fresh snow. Only a single footprint remained, already fading. The angel still sat on the bench where he had placed it, the note trembling in the morning wind. Ethan pressed it to his chest and closed his eyes. For the first time in years, something broke through his numbness, sharp and terrifying, like a crack of light in a sealed room. He had been drifting for so long, but now, against all reason, he felt the stirrings of resolve. A little girl's desperate prayer had called him back to life, and he could not look away. The city woke around him, indifferent to his revelation. Cars moved through slush, people hurried past, and the world carried on. But Ethan Carter stood at the threshold of his mansion, an angel clutched to his heart, and understood that his life had changed. Somewhere in the snow, a child needed someone to stay. For the first time in a long while, Ethan wanted to be that someone. The days that followed were restless, filled with the constant echo of a child's voice that Ethan could not silence. At meetings, his colleagues spoke of profits and partnerships, but every word dissolved into static against the memory of a girl's raw hands scrubbing at frozen stone. Numbers and projections blurred while, in the margins of his notes, his pen drifted into sketches of angel wings, shaky lines that betrayed how deeply the image had lodged inside him. When asked for his opinion, he mumbled excuses, but his thoughts remained tethered to the snowy driveway and the battered ornament that still sat upon his piano like a quiet accusation. He searched for her in every shadow. On the nights when the wind rattled the windows, he found himself pacing the halls, checking the driveway from every angle. At last, unable to endure the not knowing, he turned to the one resource he trusted more than his own restless instincts. In the security room, he asked Calvin, his head of staff, to pull up the footage from that night. Together they watched the grainy film play out, headlights flooding the drive, the small figure kneeling in the cold, her scramble into the darkness, and then nothing. Ethan replayed the clip again and again, freezing her image on the screen, studying her face, as if by staring hard enough he could summon her back. When Calvin asked if he wanted to save the file, Ethan said yes without hesitation. It was not proof, it was a reminder that she had been real. But reminders were not enough. He began calling shelters, one after another, asking about a girl around 8 years old, thin, brown-haired, carrying perhaps a broken angel ornament. Each time the answer was the same: no, we have not seen her. Some volunteers took his number, others sounded weary. But he pressed on. His voice trembled despite his practiced tone, betraying how much the search mattered. For the first time in years, his energy was not spent building an empire, but searching for a single lost child. Across town, Lily Evans lived in a world as cold as the snow she scrubbed. Her foster aunt, Sharon, treated her more like an inconvenience than a child. In the dim light of a cramped apartment, Sharon's voice lashed out over bills and broken appliances, reminding Lily that no one wanted her. Lily curled into herself, clutching what scraps of hope she could keep hidden. A drawing of an angel slipped under her pillow, torn from her aunt's hands whenever discovered. Silence became her survival, but even silence could not keep the ache from her chest. At night, when headlights glowed across the frosted window, she whispered to herself that maybe the man with the kind eyes had seen her, maybe he would return. And then she would bury the thought, before it broke her heart. Meanwhile, Ethan's world of steel and glass cracked open a little more each day. At a charity gala, he sat among powerful men and women, their laughter mingling with the clink of glasses. The event was in support of Families First, a nonprofit offering aid to children in crisis. Ethan's gaze wandered until a social worker named Jenna Morgan stepped onto the stage. Her hair fell loose from its bun, exhaustion etched across her face, but her voice carried weight as she read names of children who had come through the system. When she spoke of a little girl found in a freezing shed, surrounded by drawings of angels. Ethan's chest tightened. The fork slipped from his hand, his body jolted upright before he realized what he was doing. He found Jenna afterward near the coat check, her phone pressed to her ear. Breathless, he asked about the girl. Jenna, cautious and guarded from years of disappointment, regarded him with suspicion until he pulled the battered ornament from his pocket. She recognized it immediately. That was when Ethan learned her name, Lily. At the hospital, antiseptic filled the air, bright lights humming against the sterile white floors. Ethan felt every step pound like a drum as Jenna led him to Lily's room. The door opened to reveal a child impossibly small beneath a heap of blankets, her hands bandaged, her hair tangled. She stared at the ceiling, her face turned away from the world. Ethan crouched beside her bed, holding out the angel. His voice, unused to tenderness, cracked as he whispered, "I brought you something." Lily's gaze shifted to the ornament, but she made no move to take it. Her breath rattled, a faint whimper escaping. Ethan placed it gently in her hand, whispering that she should never have been left alone. For a moment she studied him, and then she asked the question that knocked the air from his lungs. "Are you an angel, or just someone who got lost?" Ethan bowed his head. He was no angel. He was a man who had lost everything, and yet here he was, willing to stay. The visit was brief. 5 minutes, Jenna had warned. No more. Nurses came and went, their voices hushed, their eyes sympathetic. Ethan left the room with his chest tight, fighting the urge to demand more time. In the hallway, Jenna told him bluntly that caring was not the same as staying, that most men in his position preferred to write a check and move on. But Ethan knew this was different. He did not want to buy comfort. He wanted to remain, to show Lily that someone could stay even when it was hard. That night, in his empty mansion, Ethan sat at the piano, pressing one note after another into the silence. None of them fit. None of them carried what he felt. He closed the lid and picked up the ornament instead, its cracked wing pressing against his palm like a vow. Somewhere in the city, a child was whispering prayers into the cold, hoping someone would hear. For the first time in years, Ethan found himself whispering back. It was not for himself, not for redemption or peace, but for a girl who deserved someone to stay. The winter deepened, but for Ethan, each day carried a sharper edge of purpose. His search for Lily had led him not only to her bedside but into a struggle far larger than he anticipated. The fragile bond they had begun to form was tested in the halls of law and the cold judgment of strangers. Robert Ellis, the distant uncle she barely knew, had come forward to claim her, waving papers and promises of stability. On the surface, he was polished, successful, and persuasive. But Ethan saw through him, saw the hunger for the inheritance Lily's parents had left behind, and the absence of any real affection. For Ethan, this was not about money or status. It was about keeping a child safe, about proving that family could be chosen through love rather than dictated by blood. The courtroom was stark, its walls heavy with authority. Ethan sat beside Lily, her small hand gripping his with desperate strength. Across the room, Robert wore a smirk that unsettled Ethan, as if the verdict had already been written. Lawyers spoke in polished tones, listing credentials and financial records, but none of it mattered when Lily was asked to speak. Her voice trembled as she looked at the judge, tears slipping down her cheeks, and said that family was not about things, or even names. Family was someone who stayed when you were scared, someone who did not walk away. Her words cut through the legal arguments like a clear bell, simple and undeniable. Ethan's chest ached as he realized that this child, so young and battered, understood the meaning of love more than many adults ever would. When the recess came, Lily broke down, her composure shattering. She asked him through hiccuping sobs if angels could still bring her a father if she was not good enough. Ethan knelt, pressing his forehead to hers, his voice breaking as he told her she did not need to be perfect. She only needed to let herself be loved, and he would not leave. He clung to her as though anchoring them both against the tide of uncertainty. That moment, as fragile as glass, became a promise stronger than anything he had spoken before. The judge's ruling came like a breath the room had been holding. Temporary guardianship was granted to Ethan, pending review. It was not final, but it was enough. Lily remained with him, and for the first time, the possibility of a future together felt real. Outside the courthouse, the city hummed with its usual rhythm, but for Ethan and Lily, the world had shifted. She clung to his hand, and he held on tightly, knowing that no matter how long the road ahead might be, he would not let go. Life in the mansion began to change in ways Ethan could not have imagined. The once sterile halls grew warmer with every small sign of Lily's presence. Her drawings taped to the refrigerator, mismatched mittens left carelessly by the door, the faint sound of her laughter echoing through rooms that had long been silent. On Saturday mornings, they baked cookies together, flour dusting the counters and clinging to Ethan's sleeves. He found himself laughing at the chaos, a sound he had almost forgotten belonged to him. They played chess in the evenings, Lily's brow furrowed in concentration, her triumphs celebrated with shy smiles. Slowly, the loneliness that had once defined Ethan's life was replaced by a new rhythm, messy and unpredictable, but alive. Still, challenges remained. Nights when Lily woke from nightmares crying out for her mother, Ethan would sit by her bed, holding her hand until the fear passed. On the anniversary of Emma's passing, he and Lily lit a candle together. That evening, she gathered the courage to sit at the piano, her small hands stumbling over a melody her mother once played. Ethan joined her, their music weaving memory with hope, thin but beautiful. In those moments, he realized healing was not the absence of pain, but the courage to share it. Legal battle was not over. Robert Ellis pressed forward with appeals, his attorneys circling like vultures. But Ethan no longer faced the fight alone. Jenna Morgan, steady and unyielding, stood by them, her testimony carrying weight with the court. Mrs. Brooks offered warmth and support, visiting often and reminding them both that families could be built in many ways. Even the staff at the shelter, once skeptical of Ethan's intentions, saw the sincerity in his actions. They became a circle around Lily, a community of voices saying she deserved to stay where she was loved. As the months passed, Ethan discovered a part of himself he had long buried. The businessman who once defined success by numbers now measured it in the light of Lily's smile. He painted her room sunshine yellow, letting her trace her name along the baseboard in white paint. He listened to her chatter about school, her pride in a certificate for kindness, her shy excitement over new friends. He learned to navigate the mess of art projects scattered across the dining table, to laugh when syrup dripped across the counter during Sunday breakfasts. Each of these small moments became a thread in the fabric of their new life, binding them tighter together. The final court hearing arrived, with the first blooms of spring. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of thawing earth and the promise of new beginnings. Ethan's hands trembled as he straightened his tie, but Lily's laughter drifted from the hallway, grounding him. In the courtroom, voices of lawyers and officials filled the space, but what mattered most was Lily's quiet answer when asked what she wanted. She wished for a father who would choose her every day, not just for now, but forever. Her words silenced the room, carrying a truth so simple that even the law could not ignore it. When the judge declared Ethan Carter her father in every way that mattered, relief washed over him like sunlight breaking through clouds. There were no grand celebrations, no dramatic music, only the quiet exhale of hope becoming real. Lily threw her arms around him, trembling with joy, and Ethan held her close, whispering that he would always choose her. For the first time, neither of them doubted it. That evening, the mansion glowed with warmth. Friends gathered, laughter spilled down the hallways, and children decorated paper angels to hang on the tree in the foyer. Ethan and Lily stepped outside, the night air cool against their faces. Together they sent the paper angels into the sky, tiny wings carrying their wishes upward. For Ethan, it was no longer a question of whether angels could bring him a daughter. The truth was clearer now. Love had been the answer all along. Love, chosen again and again, even in fear. The house behind them, once silent and cold, was alive with music and promise. And for the first time in years, Ethan Carter was not alone. He was a father, and that was enough. In the end, what began with a broken ornament and a whispered question became something far greater than either of them could have imagined. A lonely millionaire who thought his life was already written found a reason to believe again. A little girl who had been told she was unwanted discovered that love could be steady, patient, and real. Together, they built a home where silence no longer ruled, where laughter spilled into every corner, where promises were not just spoken, but lived day by day. The angel with a cracked wing did not represent loss anymore. It became a symbol of hope, proof that even the most fragile beginnings can grow into unshakable bonds. Ethan did not need perfection to be a father, and Lily did not need to earn love by being flawless. What they both needed was someone willing to stay, someone who chose them, not once, but again and again, in the face of fear, in the midst of trials, through moments of doubt and joy alike. That is what family truly island. Not just bloodlines or legal papers, but a choice to show up, to protect, to listen, and to believe in one another, even when the world seems to say otherwise. Ethan found that the real miracle was not the return of wealth or status, but the chance to hear Lily's voice calling him Dad with certainty. Lily discovered that angels do not always come from the sky. They sometimes come in the form of people who refuse to walk away. Their story reminds us that healing does not come all at once, but through countless small acts of love. A warm meal shared, a hand held in the dark, a promise whispered and kept. And if such a transformation is possible for them, it is possible for anyone. No matter how broken the past may be, no matter how heavy the silence has grown, love still has the power to turn a mausoleum into a home, to turn despair into hope, and to turn strangers into family. Here at the Retold Stories, we believe in sharing these moments not because they are grand or flawless, but because they are real. Because they remind us that the world still holds second chances, quiet heroes, and unexpected miracles. If this story touched your heart, even for a moment, we invite you to stay with us. Join our community of listeners who believe in kindness, in resilience, and in the extraordinary power of love. Subscribe to the Retold Stories and let the next story remind you once more that even broken wings can fly, and that hope is always waiting just beyond the silence.